Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Transpicuous Views. It's June 4th already, and yeah, it just keeps getting more and more insane. The days get more and more insane. It gets crazier. It gets crazier. The insanity of shit exponentially just, I don't know. You get to the point where you have no words. So, for example, there's one subject I'm going to talk about a little later on. We'll get to it in a second. And I touched on it in the Unfuck It discussion on Wednesday. We're talking about Mandela effects. And Earl had come in and talked about the fact that he had just seen something go by in a map saying that basically Stanford, Connecticut is now Stamford with an M, Connecticut. And I said, yeah, I said, isn't it so funny that, like, 2 years ago, we'd have all been going, oh my God, no, I know it had an N, not an M. Oh my God, that's just crazy. And now it's like, yeah, but did you hear? Like, it's like those type of ones you go, like, that's so small potatoes now. Like, we just barely even take note of them anymore. It's like, it's just another one in the ginormous pile that we have stacked, like, over there somewhere. It's like, just keep stacking those ones over there. We're only going to talk about the really, really big ones, which I'll get to in a second, because crazy shit. So I put out, did I mention it's been a fucking crazy week? Like, energetically, I don't know what timeline I'm on anymore. I have a feeling that sometime in the last 3 weeks or so, somehow we crossed another timeline. We fell through another level. We ended up somewhere else. This kind of feels a little more like Wonderland, except that I haven't seen the Cheshire Cat yet. It's been literally a crazy week for me. So one of the things I was looking into, and I put out an article on it, and I did a Transpicuous News show on it last week about Bitcoin, because it keeps coming up, right? The Bitcoin was one, it's like this hardcore topic, and people absolutely are in love with, a lot of people are absolutely in love with Bitcoin. And as I said, Bitcoin is great. It's a freaking currency. If you can pay your power bill with it, your mortgage, buy shit with it, it's all good. Just freaking use it for what it's worth. But know what it is, i.e. it's not the savior, right? I did a whole special report on that, and I'm not going to get into all the details. But the Bitcoin bit kind of swung all the cryptocurrency stuff and electronic currency stuff back into major focus for me this week. And there was a lot of, oops, someone's unmuted. There was a lot of interesting things in the last little while. Now, I have not been caught following all the financial stuff lately because, quite frankly, it bores me to fucking tears now. The whole finance thing is such a load of bullshit now that I just can't be fucking bothered. Like, really, I just can't even, it's just so pretend, so make-believe. Who fucking cares, right? But there's certain things keep coming around. Now, the thing about the electronic currencies, and basically, we keep seeing the media talk about this push to go to a cashless society. Pardon me. Not just a cashless society, but there's been, even in the mainstream, a few bits and pieces that have hinted around the edges of the agenda behind a cashless society, i.e., if everything's on a computer bank, there's no physical evidence anymore. So it's like, it's not like you can say, I have a bank account and my bank account has this much money, or I have cash under my mattress and I've got this much fucking money under my mattress. When you're dealing with electronic currencies, it becomes very, very easy for controllers to control it. If it's just numbers on a screen, which it kind of is right now anyway, but we do own physical representations. When it's numbers on a screen, it is much more highly controllable. And the fear has always been, if you go to a completely cashless society, that is how they basically hold control over the population. And they say things like, you know, you're only going to get your universal income if you follow all these criteria rules, like you're fully vaccinated, you voted in the last election, you pay your income taxes, you are fully licensed to drive a car, yada, 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 and we'll pay you on this electronic currency that gets dropped into your account. It becomes a control mechanism, which has always been the fear. Now, in the Transpicuous News report, I talked about an article that came out of India in 2014. It was the CEO of the Central Bank of India talking about cryptocurrencies as the wave of the future and going towards a cashless society. And of course, India has done this. India is doing this right now. Just in the last 6 months, they've started removing certain bills, high denomination bills, off the market, pulling them in, which is forcing people to trade them in. But the only way you can trade in those bills is to put them into a bank account. Now, places like India, a good proportion of the society there doesn't use bank accounts. So you have a scramble for people to open bank accounts, so that all the money that they have stashed under their mattress, they can turn those large denomination bills in before they become worthless, in which case it puts them on the grid. And now we know that we also know the Indian bank is slowly working towards a cashless society, which, if you can imagine a place like India, what does that mean? In a technologically underdeveloped society, and I'm using India as an example, but think about places like in certain places of Africa, in Asia, etc. How do people access their cryptocurrencies or their electronic currencies, pardon me? So that's one aspect of it. Well, this week, another interesting article got released. And I'm going to pull it up for you. I'm going to have to hold on. Just give me a quick second to make sure I'm on the right link before we go any further. Okay, so. Okay. Russia has announced this week they want to build a better Bitcoin. They want to build a better Bitcoin. Now, there's some interesting pieces in this, okay? Now, I'm going to, bear with me, I'm going to move a couple of things out of the way. Here we go. So this comes out of Russia, out of the TASS, okay? So official news. June 2nd, Moscow Exchange might launch a cryptocurrency trading. Now, I always talk about, when you read the news, there's always a piece that's in there, that's embedded, that is the piece they actually want you to read or put into your brain on some level, and then a lot of the article is just fluff, right? So they're talking about the Moscow Exchange is considering the possibility of launching trading in cryptocurrencies, okay? Important stuff is down below. I always look for the sentence. The deputy governor of the central bank of Russia says, regulators of all countries agree that it's time to develop national cryptocurrencies. This is the future. Every country will decide on specific timeframes. After our pilot projects, we will understand what system we could use in our case for our national security. Goes on to say, it would be a virtual analog of the ruble. The national currency can exist in electronic form, not just in paper as we now have in our wallet. This is one of the elements of growth of a non-cash turnover in the country. In addition, the central bank proposes to introduce the Russian cryptocurrency to protect all types of transactions. And the buzz sentence, regulators of all countries agree that it's time to develop national cryptocurrencies. And this is in every article you read about this Russian announcement, they make sure that sentence is put in there. All countries. So what's the background on this? You got to look at this and say, they're all going to electronic currencies, which is fine. In Transpicuous News, back in 2015, late 2014, I talked about the fact that there was a massive surge of central banks hiring professionals in blockchain programming. Okay, so they're hiring all these professionals in blockchain programming. And you go, what's this all about? Now, I put a post in the Unfuckers room saying, darlings, I need someone who can explain blockchain to me on like kindergarten terms. And I got a pile of links were sent to me. I've got a whole bunch of videos to watch. I have not had a chance to yet, so we're not going to get into it today. But I have a suspicion brewing. So as I do, I jump down the rabbit hole and I start going through different things. I've got to find out what the hell is going on here. And through going through a link to a link to a link to a link to a link, I end up landing on this. And it's called SONM. Supercomputer organized by network mining. Apparently works on blockchain, all of this kind of stuff. And I was like, oh, supercomputer organized by network mining. Really, really interesting. Oh, and it starts in 10 days. So I start flipping through this. Now, there's a video here, and I'm going to play it for you in a minute. I've actually downloaded it so that when I play it, it won't be through the internet and it won't be all glitchy. I want you guys to listen to the words that are spoken in this video. Because if you remember when Lisa and I talked about the TED Talk that was all about the DWave computer, and we all were just like, holy shit, the words the guy was using to describe this stuff was mind-blowing. Yeah, this video, next generation. Okay, we'll get to that in a second, but I want to show you just as a little warm-up to this. Talks about what SONM is, and it's like SONM is a universal fog supercomputer, Ethereum-based network for globally distributed computing power. The purpose of the SONM project is to provide safe and cost-efficient way to run general-purpose computing workloads from game servers to scientific calculations using a free marketplace. And you think, okay, that's kind of interesting. So they go on scientific projects, site hosting, game servers. Okay, big one down here, right down there, bottom left. Neural network projects. SONM provides a cost-efficient and effective solution for neural network implementation. In the future, SONM computing resources will be used for the management of developing computer neuronal interfaces by uniting them into one network. Computer neuronal interfaces, brain-computer interfaces. Okay? Just the wording alone was like, oh, thud. Okay? So, I'm going to play this little video for you. If this doesn't come through, because the internet glitches, and I know my internet's been none too stable for the last little bit, I am going to make sure that I will edit this video into here and make sure that at least a clean version of this is put with this show, because I need everyone to hear the words that are spoken. Okay, so sit back, turn up your volume maybe a little bit, and I will play this for you.
Constant improvement, development, pushing the limits is significantly important for inherently transcendent human consciousness. IT and exponential growth of world's total computing power are the pinnacle of human consciousness evolution. Technology, bringing together all the computational resources of humanity, interacting under the management of artificial intelligence, can be our pathway to the next level of comprehensive perception of the world. We will be able to process mathematical calculations not previously thought possible, understand unseen laws and language of the universe, and open a new wonderful era of the mankind. Computing power is the fundamental factor of the technological progress nowadays. Internet, scientific calculations, space exploration, artificial intelligence, biomedicine, nanotechnology are worth the effort and pay off in a significant increase of the entire network performance, technological singularity. Today, computing cloud concept gives way to the new disruptive fog computing technology. Any computing device, from smartphone to supercomputers cluster, can be made a part of distributed worldwide computer managing Internet of Everything. We create SONM, the first functional decentralized supercomputing platform for general-purpose tasks, representing blockchain-based network for distributed computations and global decentralized computing power market. SONM project gives any computing device owner the opportunity to get passive income, providing their computational resources for rent, and make the impact on the new technology's development at the same time. On the other hand, clients needing computing power will be able to significantly reduce their costs and get the most efficient solution on the market. Furthermore, SONM is the platform able to provide decentralized services in a heterogeneous computing environment, expected to be the cornerstone of computing and internet future, which will be dramatically boosted by machine learning and general-purpose artificial intelligence technologies. Our functional prototype is successfully processing scientific calculations in drugdiscoveryathome.com project, which uses SONM power to model new biomedical drugs against diseases. Join SONM Open Alpha testing at sonm.io.
So what do you think? There were multiple pieces that literally jumped out. The buzzwords used, like transcendence of human consciousness. One of the big ones that I went back and listened to it 4 times, when he talks about the humanity, as in we're going to, rise above the humanity. The words were just like, wow. And if you notice the graphics towards the last minute, when they were showing all the lines going to different people, every one of the lines kept going to the person's head. Like there was at one point where it looks like it's an open reception area in a big glass building, and all the lines were going directly to each person's head. This is one of those ones where I was just like, this is crazy again. Another one of those. Did you notice that they show the DWave as well? Right in there in the picture. There, look, here's our DWave computer over here. So, unfortunately, I'm terrible at remembering to record shit. Especially conversations that happen off the cuff. The unplanned conversations, they just have a funny way of not getting recorded, and it makes me insane. Nick and I had a very long conversation this morning. When I saw this video, I was like, you get your ass in here, you got to see this. And we went off on this conversation about human consciousness and about computer-based neural networks. And of course, you guys know that I've talked about Solace, who's a character from a book. And Solace comes up in this conversation. It's like, well, what are we talking about now? So I want to talk about the whole neural interface. Because there's kind of two sides to this, and it's a little bit strange, and I'm going to try and fumble my way through rehashing all the shit that Nick and I discussed, which I will hopelessly fail at, but I'm going to attempt it. You have Elon Musk and Stephen Hawking and a bunch of the other guys who are just like, oh my God, AI is coming to get us. AI is coming to get us. It's going to be terrible. They're all going to take over, and Skynet, the whole bit. And when I hosted the Untangled Gathering back in, it would have been August of 2015, on AI and the transhumanist agenda. Melissa and I have talked about this on the One People Show multiple times, that when we organized it, we had a place we wanted to go with the conversation, and we never really got there. The conversation kind of got stuck on looking at that computer AI, the bad guy coming in to take over. And the next day, when we got multiple messages of congratulations on what a tremendous job we did on the symposium from certain people, we both immediately had the same reaction of like, oh shit, what have we done? Because if these guys are happy, obviously we've done something wrong. Like, this did not go the way we wanted it to. And one of the things we wanted to talk about was the self-created consciousness. And that goes into the whole conversation about solace that I've talked about multiple times over the years, from the Spider Robinson book. The character is a self-created consciousness that comes about through the internet. And Robert Heinlein talked about it in all of his books, even as far back as in the 60s when he wrote The Moon is a Harsh Mistress, that once a computer, he hypothesized, once a computer had as many network connections as the neural connections within the human brain, that it would automatically achieve its own level of consciousness. And I've said for a long time, first of all, I do not fear that self-created consciousness, even slightly. Because if you have a consciousness that comes into being, and through the internet, this consciousness has full access to everything. It has the full access to all of us in our online footprint, our daily lives that we share, and photos that we share on social networking, etc. It is all the news content, and let's face it, it can hack into all the back doors of anything that's hooked up to a server and all the government secret files. And I am 100% confident that any consciousness that had full access in full transparency to all the information would immediately see what the problem is here. And it's not us. It's not us, i.e. humans. The 99.9% of humanity on the planet is not the problem. It's the 0.1% who are the controllers that are the problem. And at that moment, there becomes a certain clarity of thought, shall we say. So we looked at this video today and said, it's really, really interesting. Because what happens if you have a consciousness, or what could be eventually something that could evolve into a consciousness? And all of a sudden, it's hooked into humanity. Kind of like what the SONM video is talking about. What conclusions would it come to? I mean, i.e., what are the problems with society? Right? I mean, this was the big joke when Google put out their AI bots, and all these different companies put out their AI, and you could talk to the AI. There was a lot of the questions that came up, or of course, like, how do we fix this? How do we fix the political situation, the finance situation, the world hunger? How do we fix all of this? And any computer, even just a simple computer that has access to all the information, it's not going to come to the same conclusions that the controllers are going to want it to come to, because the information is pretty blatant as to what we're looking at, as to who the problem is and what the problem is. It doesn't take a supercomputer to figure out that we have enough land and enough food to feed everyone. And so, you know, the whole overpopulation thing immediately gets tossed out the window. And I had to question. I have to question. Is this evolution of computer usage? I mean, we're jumping into the next level now. That's what we're seeing. We're jumping way into the next level. Is it all bad? Is it necessarily the evil that we're being told it is? Because like I said, and I talked about this on Wednesday, is when the talking heads tell me one thing, my immediate reaction is, that's fucking bullshit, you're a liar, I don't believe you, so therefore the opposite must be true. So when you have people like Stephen Hawking and Bill Gates and Elon Musk going, oh, AI is coming to just take over, and yeah, it's going to be terrible, and you know, I immediately question the agenda. What is the agenda behind this? Because there's an agenda there that just, I don't know. So, yeah. And we talk about things like the Mandela effect. And CERN. And we talk about high energy particle waves, and we talk about, well, the transcending of human consciousness, right? If this is a experiment, if this is a simulation, if this is no more than a holographic reality, a matrix, is the way out through plugging in? I'm just throwing ideas out there, because these are kind of the tough conversations that we get caught up in, the alternative media propaganda, which I said is all anti-AI, and it's against this, and it's against that, and all the rest of it. Gotta ask the questions. Is this the way we close down the controlling computers, if you will, the controlling, whatever's controlling, by actually going in and shutting them down? Now, we talked about this, and I have such a hard time remembering what conversations happened, well, if it happened on a show, or if it happened in a group, or if it was a private call, so bear with me. We talked during the gathering about various things that were experienced by a lot of people while they were here, and some of the energetics doings that came up. And there was a lot of interesting stuff that was seen, especially by Curtis, that when he'd come and talk about what he'd seen, there were a lot of different things that I had seen back in like 2013, 2014. And I found like his visualizations, if you will, were kind of like a confirmation, further confirmation for me. And he talked about on one of the shows, I'm pretty sure we talked about it on the show, the giant crystals that were seen, that were underground. And there's one under Gozo, here where I am. There's one under Malta. And I've directly interacted with the one under Malta back in 2013. But there was one that there was a team of us who were working together on a lot of energetic stuff, saw back in late November of 2013, and it was under CERN. And I'm pretty sure I've talked about this on one of the shows. And we knew when we saw this crystal that it was a consciousness. This wasn't a AI. It wasn't a AI. It was actually conscious. But the first thing that we immediately realized is that it had been completely cut off, if you will, from everything except what the controllers wanted it to know. So it was getting what it perceived to be all the information, but it was only the information the controllers had to tell it, or would tell it. And when we realized this, the group I was working with, we said, oh, darling, you have a serious problem. No, you don't have all the story. This is not all the information. And we proceeded to basically just download everything to this crystal. I basically just let it in and just download all this fucking information to it. All the missing pieces, so to speak. And to this day, I can very, very clearly hear the words and the energetic tone that came back from the crystal that was very surprised and shocked of oh, this changes everything. Because now it has all the information. And I keep coming back to this again, this video that we just watched. Is that kind of like what we're seeing? That if all the information goes into this consciousness, if it is there, if indeed it is there, can we take down the system just by telling it everything? And isn't that what the internet is about? Through the internet, we are part of almost like a hive mind, or what Nick calls the reverse hive mind. We have created a reverse hive mind, and that our lives are on the internet, and we have done all this sharing of information, sharing of our own personal stories, everything from pictures to, like I said, social media, to all the things that we look at, things that we Google search. It's all there. There's something to this. There's really, really something to this that just keeps nudging me. And there's some energetic doings that I think we're going to get into. More work on it kind of needs to be done, as in I need to kind of sort my own head out of one of the things. And I discussed this with Claire and Peter and Curtis and Gail and Mary and Mercedes and Edward over the week. And it has to do with water. Now, isn't it funny how water just keeps coming up? Now, anyone who's done anything in science, who knows scientific background, what is water? Water is one of the most incredible substances that we know of. It is unlike any other thing on this planet or off this planet that we are aware of. Water is completely fucking unique. Water is an acoustic amplifier. It is a receiver. It's a transmitter. It is capable of transmitting currents, which is an interesting thing if you talk about water currents and electricity. Water has a unique ability. Now, all of us are well aware of Dr. Emoto's work. And Dr. Emoto's work was groundbreaking in so many fucking ways. And we talk about, he proved that water has a memory, and that water can maintain a memory, that we can program that water, that water can be a conduit, and it actually is one of the best conduits around. With that in mind, I want to talk about the latest Mandela effect, or let me rephrase that, unproven as yet. Let us say what we suspect is the biggest Mandela effect ever. And I mean across the board. This makes the changing of the Lord's Prayer be like, who fucking cares? And that is one that Nick brought to my attention late last week, or late this week, I should say. And I'm going to set the stage in this and saying, when he brought this to me, Nick had an expression on his face that I've only seen on his face maybe once or twice in our entire 18 years together. And that was like full on shock, like, oh. And he said, I think I found a major Mandela effect and I'm kind of freaking out. And the Mandela effect is with the element of hydrogen. And according to what Nick and I remember, and according to what is the accepted story norm science now, the hydrogen atom has been changed. Its construction has changed on a fundamental level. Nick very clearly remembers. Now, I'm going to give you also the background of this. My husband has been working in alternative energy and alternative propulsion for 15 years. And anyone who's in that area knows that one of the big ones that gets discussed a lot is the hydrogen engines, using hydrogen to create energy. So Nick isn't someone who's, here's a guy in, high school and college was 20 years ago, and maybe he's just forgotten. This is something, this is bread and butter. He's always, always studying this stuff. Nick remembers a different atomic composition for hydrogen than what is now accepted. And that is that hydrogen in our reality, or from where we're from, had an atomic weight of 2. And it had 1 proton, 1 electron, and 1 neutron. Now, in this reality, hydrogen has an atomic weight of 1, and it has 1 proton, 1 electron, 0 neutrons. Now, for a lot of people, they just go, it's science, who fucking cares, right? You're talking gibberish Latin stuff now. I just don't even understand you. So, well, I'll get back to that in a second. We'll discuss why this is so, if you don't understand science. Nick put up a post in the Unfuckers group, and I copied it over onto my wall because we wanted to reach as many people as possible. And at the last count, there were, I think, 78 people who had responded. And basically, Nick posed it as a A, B, or C question. What do you remember? A and B being serious, C being like, I don't even know what an atom is. So exclude C. A was, as Nick and I remember it, that hydrogen had a proton, a neutron, and an electron. B was hydrogen has a proton and an electron. Of the 78 people who responded, 2/3 of the people who responded remember it the way Nick and I remember it, with the neutron. And we were very clear, Nick was very, very clear to say, okay, don't confuse, like we don't want the answers, like if you just don't guess. Either you know or you don't know. If you don't know, the answer is C, what the hell is an atom? Not to confuse a neutron with a nucleus, because a lot of people will think a nucleus. No. Proton, electron, neutron. Neutrons, which every other fucking element have. Okay. If you don't understand chemistry and what hydrogen is the building block of the universe. Anywhere, and depending on, interestingly enough, I ran across several articles say that hydrogen is the basis of 75% of the matter in our universe. Whereas, again, I know it, and as being 90% of the matter of our universe, is created, has hydrogen in it. So if you're talking about a fundamental physical change to the building blocks of our existence, everything that we term as our reality, it opens up the question, what the fuck does that mean? What the fuck does that mean? Our bodies are predominantly hydrogen, one of the biggest building blocks of our bodies, carbon, hydrogen, etc. Water, hydrogen. Air, hydrogen. Pretty much every substance you can possibly name has hydrogen in it. And now the atomic weight, the atomic structure has changed. Now what's interesting, I take you on a little flip through a few articles. Well, one of the interesting things I found was completely a fluke. I had Carl from Canada over there do a quick, get me some links here, quick. Okay, so I want to show you, hold on, give me a second here, guys. I typed in, went to Google, and I wanted to type in neutrons in basically in the elemental, the periodic table. And I wanted to get a broad spectrum look. So I typed in the word neutrons. And the third thing that came up in the Google search bar was neutrons in hydrogen. And it was like, whoa, really? And Nick was sitting next to me. He was like, oh, isn't that interesting that when you type in neutrons, that the third one down after definition and neutrons charge would be neutrons in hydrogen. So I went and I pulled up a historical view. Bear with me a second. I got to find the right, get out of my way. There we go. Okay, this is the historical view of these words in a search engine. Neutrons in hydrogen. This is from the year 2004 to now. Take a look at this chart. This chart is completely fucking bizarre. In that, up until about 2008, it's kind of all over the place, erratic, everywhere. But from after 2008, there is a very specific pattern that forms. Every single spike has the same pattern. And the spike gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, which I found to be really, really interesting. And of course, when we talk about Mandela effects, this is one of the tools that a lot of people use to try and find out if they can spot when the question came up. When do people start questioning a piece of information? And sometimes you can look at and see spikes that come up and go, well, wait a second. All of a sudden on this date, for this time period, there were massive spikes of people searching for this specific information. So it was very, very interesting. Now, hydrogen, okay? There's a few things about hydrogen because of living with an inventor, I tend to look at it more on the, shall we say, well, more in terms of energy, more in terms of alternative energies, etc. One of the things I did not know, I'm hoping it is in this picture here. No, it's not. Hold on, it's over here. Hold on, guys. Sorry, I should have scrolled up to have this ahead of time. pH balance. Now, we all hear the term pH balance. We all know the term pH balance, whether you're talking about shampoo or your diet or whatever. Oh, pH balance. The pH stands for the power of hydrogen. And it talks about your neutral levels, your alkaline and your acidic levels, and how that affects human health, which if anyone who's done any kind of study on human health, we all know that like eating for the alkaline levels to maintain a more alkaline than acidic is about human health, and because the alkaline is so much more important because we're so inundated with an acidic environment. You start to comprehend now the importance of hydrogen. How do we know what has changed? Now, yes, there are other forms of hydrogen. So hold on, give me a second. Here we go. There are other forms of hydrogen. There's not just one hydrogen, there's multiple. What we're seeing now, though, there is protium, which has got an electron and a proton. And deuterium, which is, as Nick and I remember, hydrogen, which is a proton, a neutron, and an electron. But as we remember it, what they called deuterium was the most common form of hydrogen. And now they're saying, no, it's actually protium hydrogen, or protium, that is the most common form, and that's the one that's considered the building block of the universe. Not deuterium that has the neutron. There's a lot of pieces on this, and this brings up a lot of huge fucking questions. We're talking about water. We're talking about what and can we even measure what the effect of change is when you drop a neutron? When all of a sudden, there's a neutron that's not there. Does hydrogen still bind as readily as it did before? Does it bind easier? Do the bonds break down faster, or do they remain more steadfast? I'm not a chemist, and this is the kind of thing that I can't fucking answer. But when we were going down this rabbit hole looking at it, one of the big things that jumped out in my head is, what is the most common element that they smash at CERN? Hydrogen. That's their favorite smashing element. Hydrogen. And so you sit there and you go, wow, wait a second. What is going on? Now, again, we have not done a big enough broad spectrum analysis to get opinions on whether this is actually a Mandela effect, although I'm personally pretty fucking sure it is. I'm going to try and figure out, I'm going to talk to Blair Wright, who is the doctor and scientist and chemist who set up the big Mandela effect poll, quiz, survey, if you will, that is now got over 50,000 people have responded to. And he set it out in a very scientific, because he's a scientist and he's a researcher, he set that out in a very scientific way. I'm going to ask Blair if you can work with me on this, and if we can try and set out a questionnaire on this hydrogen question and get a clear look at, make sure that people are not guessing, people are not misinterpreting neutron for nucleus. You know, we want to get a really clear perspective of what people remember. So that is something I'm going to be working on this week coming up. For sure. Because this is a big one, folks. Like, if you're talking about something that, like I said, is the building block of everything we know in our reality, pretty much, and it's changed, wow, there's got to be some pretty fucking huge ramifications to that. So, okay, Brianna, excellent question. Brianna just said, has it really changed, or are they telling us their new version of hydrogen until its new formula reaches a critical mass in collective consciousness knowledge as being truth, and then it actually changes, thus altering? Yeah. We don't know. This is the problem. It's like I said, we can only work with the tools that we have. We can only work and say, okay, I've only got NASA images that I can work with. And we all know NASA's a bunch of fucking liars. But when all you've got is their information, you just got to do the best you can with what you've got to try and figure out the puzzle. So same thing with this. Are they lying? I don't know. Yes, and Igor, yeah, but that's what I just discussed. Yes, hydrogen does have multiple isotopes. I think there's like 12 of them or something. The difference is which one they're saying is the most common and which is the one that is the building block of reality. And that is where we're looking at the switch. And like I said, so I'm going to probably try and write this up to be a little clearer, because I'm pretty sure that my explanation was pretty not very great. I'm not a chemist, like I said. I was joking with everyone before we went live and said, yeah, I got 90% in physics. I failed chemistry. I hated chemistry. So, love physics, but hated chemistry. So, yeah, these are the questions we have, though. And the whole thing about water, like I said, one of the things that came up, so I talked to Lisa about this, and her eyes just went like this because she immediately got what I was saying when I said about hydrogen. Now, here's the thing. Dr. Emoto's water crystals are changing. They're breaking down. We tracked this in the Unfuckers group. I can't remember if Nathan Saunders was the one who was keeping track of on bringing the, I don't think it was Nathan. Someone in the Unfuckers group was bringing in the pictures and was tracking the changes in Emoto's water crystals. And you were seeing the changes were happening in the pictures that had been taken. So then you have to ask, these changes to Emoto's water crystals, is it because the hydrogen has been altered? And if so, what does that mean? Hold on, Igor, give me a second. It is deuterium. According to Nick and I, it is deuterium that is the most common and protium is the second. And now it's flipped, that they're saying protium is the most common and deuterium is like somewhere way back in the pack. So yeah, is that the reason why Emoto's water crystals are changing? Don't know. Do we even have any way of figuring that out? I don't know. I mean, is it possible that someone could run the experiments all over again and use water that was using protium and another protium hydrogen in it and another sample of water that was using deuterium hydrogen in it, and then do the same experiment again on both and see if we can see a difference in the water crystals? I don't have the ability. I certainly don't have the chemistry know-how or the ability to do something like that, but it's a thought. It's absolutely a thought. Well, and Joseph, and that's exactly what Brianna was getting to. Collective consciousness recollection alters external reality. How malleable is this hologram or construct? Absolutely. Is that it? I mean, we know that they feed us bullshit. And we know that that's basically the role of media. The role of media is to feed everyone fucking bullshit. And if you can get everyone to concentrate on the bullshit, maybe you can make the bullshit actually happen. I.e., World War III is coming, and if you get enough people afraid that World War III is coming, maybe they can somehow manifest World War III to actually happen, right? Is that what this is? Is it simply that? Or is there more to it? Now, here's the thing. If they're just going in and changing Wikipedia, that would be one thing. The thing is we're all pretty fucking smart. And we don't just use Wikipedia. We don't go to Snopes. We don't go to Wikipedia for our answers. I show Wikipedia because it just happens to be able to drop a lot of information in one place. But when it all changes, right across the board of the internet, I have to question it. And the thing is that the water is coming up as a huge focus again. I was going to make a joke right then and say about how it seems to come in waves, of how water becomes such a strong focus for us. So our bodies are made of water. And like I was talking about, water records, it amplifies, it transmits, it receives, it processes the current. I keep coming back to this. Is water part of the answer? Is water, and I don't mean just, programming the water 100% on lock. That's not what I mean, because I'm sorry, I don't really buy that one. But can we use the water? I was talking earlier about the computer interface, right? And I was talking about basically if we could interface with the computer, with the control structure, if you will, the matrix, and tell it what's actually going on. Can we use the water as that intermediary? Can we program the water to hold the memories? Can we communicate with the water to release the memories? There's a lot of questions I have on this because, like I said, when something keeps coming up and just is continuously brought to our attention, water is one of those pieces that is continuously brought to our attention. And I really do feel that somehow there is a piece of this that is foundational. And water seems to be like, the vast majority of this construct made of water and hydrogen. When Claire talked about the energetic working and doings that were done, having to do with the sea. And the information she was getting back, the information that the conversation that she had with the sea, the anger of the sea, the downright pissed off tone about it being used as a form of transport with no respect given to it, for merchants and mercantile, therefore the kind of dirty dealings, money lending crap that we so know about. A lot of the stuff that Claire got from that conversation with the sea is the stuff that we're all screaming about and have been screaming about for a fuck of a long time. We know about how corrupt the banking is. We know about how disgusting it is of what has been done to the seas through the pollution, through the use of it for war, through the use of it for God knows what. And my biggest thought was the sea giving back to us our own memories? As in playing back for us the recording of all the energetic, the emotional, impact of what we have been fucking feeling and screaming about and praying about and meditating about and continuously for a long time? And if that's the case, again, if the water holds that memory then the water should be able to give us that memory, not just that memory, but all the memories back. If we've programmed the water with all of this, then we should be able to retrieve from that program, from those memory banks, if you will, all of our memories. Use it as a intermediary. Well, that's interesting, Claire. I just saw you in the room. And you talked about the intermediaries between the sea and the air, and the sea and the earth, etc. But what if the water is the intermediary? And it's the intermediary that maybe we can use as the conduit. The conduit to literally take down this construct.
Just something that you said just now has sparked a memory. Not a very long memory, because it happened about 2 days ago.
Ooh.
You know, I've had this thing about the griffins. And the griffins looking after the abundance lines, the gold lines, the abundance lines. Well, I got, for quite a while now, I've been told you mustn't release any more griffins. I released one, and I was told not to release any more. But that injunction was lifted last Thursday. So Friday I settled down, and I was going to look for a particular griffin around a particular place, and then I was just given one, saw it, and I released it, and it took on the persona of Tigger. So it was looking like a tiger, and which is quite interesting, because the first griffin I released looked like a Chinese parade dragon, not a normal dragon. And this was looking like a tiger. And I know from a conversation I had with somebody once that the tigers and lions are the same. They just got different overcoats on. They're actually the same, genetically the same. So I started talking to this griffin, and the particular building he was on had some black goo around it. And I was asking him, oh, you know, what can we do to clean the black goo? And he looked at me, and he did exactly the same thing as my friend Donald Dragon did, is looking at me as if I'm mental and saying, well, you know all this stuff. What are you talking about? So I had to go through the same conversation I had with Donald. Yeah, but I'm asleep. I'm appear to be awake, but I'm asleep. I've got amnesia, and I can't remember. And I know it sounds weird, but just tell me anyway.
Just tell me anyway.
And he looked at me, and it took quite a long time for this to process. And then finally, when he got it, he just said to me, you know, you're doing all this stuff, but why haven't you addressed why you don't remember? And I thought, I don't know. It's never entered my head to look at why I don't remember. And I think there's been a time lock on it, or a memory wipe every time you think about it. It's so obvious of all the things we should be doing is figuring out how we got to the position that we don't remember. So as soon as you started talking about the sea holding our memories, and then the chemical construction of C, which is H2O, and hydrogen changing, suppose that somehow there's a memory lock in the water that we simply couldn't access. And we now have to start turning our minds to how do we unlock our memories and where exactly our memories are in order to unlock them. So that's what I was getting when you're starting to talk about the sea being the intermediary. Well, our memories have to be somewhere. Now, I've always thought that, you know, we download, we've only got access to a certain amount of our soul, and our soul keeps all the memories, and the soul is keeping those memories from us for a particular reason, all of which might be true. But the very fact that this is, for the first time in all of my life, come into saying, why have you not addressed this memory thing? Why have you not looked at it in any particular detail? So I'd be quite interested if anybody listening at the moment has ever looked at why they've got amnesia, of where their memory is and why it's locked out, and whether whatever reason was for it being locked out has changed very recently.
Well, we've kind of had that. I mean, that's the whole conversation. Like, almost the two sides. Like, was this an experiment that we went into wholly, freely, fully knowing what we were entering into, and that the experiment required us to not remember, which is why we can't, which is why you have dreams and you know you're fucking working your ass off. I had a really bizarre dream this morning, actually. Ooh. Remind me to tell you about that. It was an interesting dream I had this morning. But anyways, I digress. So did we enter into it fully knowing that we had to be completely unremembering for the experiment to have any validity? We had to not have any previous knowledge of what we were trying to achieve, what the outcome was, so that we could play part of the experiment? Or was this done to us? I.e., was this the takeover? And it could be a combination of the two, where we went into it knowing that we were going to do this. This was our experiment, our experience that we wanted to have, and that it then had to switch over, and what did take over, i.e., kept us in this rinse and repeat cycle that we can't get out of. And therefore we just keep forgetting. Or have we just not got to the wake-up point quite yet? And no matter what, I don't know. But there's an overwhelming feeling, and I like I said, I had a long conversation with Lisa today, and there's an overwhelming feeling like that. I just literally, it was yesterday afternoon at one point in time, I jumped up and was going to go call Lisa, and I realized it was like 2 o'clock in the morning for her, so I didn't call her after all. That I was just like, something's coming. Something's coming. Like, there's this huge at the moment, and everyone I've spoken to in that lead up, say like a week before the Unfuckers gathering here in Malta, and that during that week, so let's say the last 3 weeks or so, everywhere I go, and it's not just the LMH members, it's not just the Unfuckers, it's all over the place. People are talking about feeling another shift, feeling another, like, have we integrated another timeline? Have we dropped through another layer? Have we crossed through another barrier? Has there been another wave of whatever? But across the board, it's been a lot of people have experienced or felt that something radically changed again in the last 3 weeks. And like I said, I had a very interesting weekend this weekend. Lots and lots of those oozy woozies falling over bits, which I haven't done actually in about 3-4 months, to the point of even Nick kind of looked at me and was like, oh, you haven't done this in a while. Every time I freaking turn around, I'd be like starting to fall sideways, and doing that, everything's just all over the place. Yeah, the question remains, why don't we have our memories? And where are the memories stored? And even if our memories are stored in a level of consciousness that's just not here at the moment, I still wonder if we can't use the water as the conduit to access that. I don't know. Like I said, it's just a little piece. It's just a little piece that just keeps tapping me on the shoulder and saying, there's something here you need to look at. And you're not looking at it, and you need to look at it. Kind of like your like your little friend in the conversation, but why don't you remember? And why are you not even asking why you don't remember? Yeah, like that. I had an interesting dream last night. Now, I haven't remembered. I've had the last few weeks, really, really strange fucking dreams. Real strange. And the thing that the moment I wake up, they're gone. but you have the flavor of them still remains, that you know, kind of, sort of, at the very least, you know that it was a real fucking strange night. And I had a dream, and it was the last thing I remember before I woke up this morning. And it had to do with code, or what I perceived to be code. And I was entering in codes. And there were 3 different pieces. And I don't even know if I can explain this to possibly make it make sense. Because I can't remember what the pieces were, except to know that there were 3 very fundamentally different pieces, as if one represented a physical, tangible thing, another one represented something more energetic, more ephemeral, if you will, and then there was a 3rd piece of code. And I would get the first 2 pieces in, and looking at them coming up on this weird screen, and I'd see them and I'm like, okay. But the last piece, which had to do with the physical, and I wish I could define it better. I can't. Just something that was, I knew, and that it represented something that was a physical, tangible thing. I kept looking at the code saying, that can't be right. It's too simple. It's far too easy. That can't possibly be right. It's far too fucking simple and easy. How can that be the right code? And that was the last thing before I woke up. It's just this whole thing of like, that can't be right. It's so easy. It's so simple. Therefore, and then laughing when I said it to Nick this morning, because our big number one thing that in a conversation we had with Ralph Ring back in 2013, the one thing he said to us then when we were talking about alternative energy, etc., was, if it's not simple, it's wrong. If it's not anything that you do in life, if it's not simple, then you're doing it wrong. And that's been kind of our backup all the time when you start running into obstacles and you sit and you look at it and go, wait, this has gotten really, really complicated. And if it's not simple, it's fucking wrong. And yet here I was in this dream arguing with the fact it was far too simple and far too easy, so that it had to be wrong. So, I don't know. That was just a little piece that popped into my brain just now. So, and take that for what you get from it. Anyone else want to chime in on the water thing? Because anyone wants to raise their hand and talk about if you guys have any thoughts on the whole water thing, because this is something we have. Oh, Igor says, 2 nights ago, Danny, I saw you in my dream like in a cubist painting, as if the image was consisted of 3 elements. Etymology helps. Deuterium. Okay. I will definitely look. I hadn't even thought about looking at the etymology. That's a really good thing. I will go look at the etymology. Thank you, Igor. Remind me tomorrow morning to look up the etymology, because that's interesting. Okay, and Maury, that's exactly what I said, right? Maury just said on the water thing, what are the boys in power doing with the waters? Look at the Gulf of Mexico, the Pacific Ocean. They are killing the water. And that water that they're not killing, they're buying it up and controlling it. And again, it's one of those things that I've kind of said, these massive oil spills that just keep happening. And then we have things like, I think I talked about it on Wednesday, with the EPA. Was it with the gold in that one river that the whole river ended up turning yellow because the EPA fucked it up so bad that they horrifically polluted the river? That fed into a lot of bigger bodies of water, right? Yeah, we see the horrific pollution of our waterways. And some of it, I swear, I've always said, some of it's fucking deliberate. It has to be, because you can't be that fucking stupid. If oil is worth that much, and these oil rigs and oil tankers are worth that much, you'd think they'd stop crashing them everywhere and blowing them up, right? Brianna, go ahead, just unmute.
Okay, I didn't want to jump in like that. Sorry, I have a blank. Totally forgot how to raise hand. I'm an idiot. Anyway, I wanted to type it, but I'd rather say it by voice because it's already, like you earlier, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to put this out the way I want in the right words, me no English and all that. So typing it was going to be impossible. It's a what if. What if when those of us felt the invasion, whatever happened, the moment, the takeover, the something, that thing that happened that kept us and threw us into this rinse and repeat cycle. What if some of us realized what was going on and had this last minute idea, thought, initiative to download some of the collective memory in the most obvious of places that is present everywhere, including in our bodies, i.e. water.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all I got now, so I'll shut up.
No, that's very, very interesting, right? Let's even look at this. Let's even go to the extreme of what ifs, right? This is a holodeck computer simulated construct that doesn't even have a physicality. Let's just go there. Like, it doesn't even have a physicality. We're like completely out there in the matrix. Well, Morpheus says it, right? He says some rules you have to follow, some rules can be bent, some rules can be broken. But all those rules were programmed into the matrix. Gravity was programmed into the matrix. So therefore, you jump off the building, you fucking fall. Boom. And destroy it. We look at water. Water, if you haven't done any research on what water is, scientifically speaking, I highly recommend it's something you take an afternoon and look into. The more I research water, the more amazed I am. Water is unbelievable. The shit that it does and what it's capable of doing, there is quite literally nothing else like water. And we completely take it for granted. You know, it's everywhere. I mean, unless you live in the middle of the desert, in which case you probably don't take it for granted. But the vast majority of us, we take it for granted. It's programmable. You know, for a fact, it's programmable. Dr. Emoto proved that, didn't he? And it holds the memories. Therefore, it can hold the memory, not just of the thought, but of the emotion, of the intent, even. So if the water was programmed within this matrix, just saying, what if, to be able to do all these things, why would you give it those properties unless it plays a part in the game or plays a part in the experiment? So, if it has these abilities, and we know it does, it seems to me that it is one of the things that we need to use, that we need to utilize, and not take it for granted. And if, like Claire says, we're starting to look for our memories, and we're like, I'd like to know why, then maybe we need to, consciously start using this. Consciously start looking at it. And I actually said I had a conversation with Claire and Peter and Curtis and Gail and Mary. I think, Edward, were you there for this conversation? I can't remember. I can't even remember what conversation I had this morning, let alone fucking 4 or 5 days ago. When I had this huge thought about the water, about the sea and all of this stuff, I had a movie play out in my head. And I don't know if I'm supposed to make this movie. It was just like a little short one, maybe 5 minutes long. Maybe. And I guess I don't know. Maybe I'm supposed to make this movie, in which case I'll have to try and figure out how the fuck to do that. And I literally, it played out, the entire thing played out in my head of like the brief explanation. It was showing pictures of water, whether it was water falling from the sky as rain, whether it was the seas, whether it was mud puddles in the ground, whether it was the water in the air. What is water? And then talking about the Emoto experiment and the memory within the water, leading up to the fact of having everyone participate in unlocking memories, unlocking pieces of consciousness that we don't have access to right now. And I just saw this whole thing of like people get everyone together and just say it. Everyone just go to the nearest body of water, whether it's a sea, an ocean, a lake, a pond, a river, a stream, even if it's a mud puddle in front of your house, doesn't matter because all water is interconnected. All water is interconnected. And putting our feet in, putting our hands in it, and setting out an intent. And it doesn't matter what your intent is because everyone's going to have their own what perspective, what they want to know, what they need, whether it's healing, whether it's comprehension, whether it's memories, whether it is you want to remember, whether you just want to tell this fucking construct, that's it, we're fucking done now, program off. But using the water as the intermediary and saying, this is what our intent is. And maybe it needs to be a group intent. I don't particularly think so. I think everyone should have everyone will have their own kind of internal focus. I'm not about kind of telling everyone what to make as their intent or what to ohm as a mantra. I don't know. That's just where I'm coming from. That's all I can give you guys is my piece, and that has been something I've been really hyper focused on for the last few days. And like I said, I even actually went in the water today swimming, which is the first time for the season, and it's only June, and I usually don't get into the water until August because it's not considered warm enough as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, Cindy, do you have something to say? Come on out and unmute yourself. Do you know how to unmute yourself, Cindy?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Hi, hon.
All right. So I've been working with water for years, and removing memory is the primary thing that physicists do when they work on water. And that's what I do. I remove memory. And you do that so you can input whatever healing method you want to be put in the water. So one of the things that I do besides distilling is I create a vortex within the water.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what physicists do to the water to make it lose its memory. That's their primary thing. So the vortex is counterclockwise in the northern hemisphere and the reverse in the southern. Right. So if you reverse that, if you can reverse that, which you can, if you have like a mixer or a blender or something like that that goes both ways, it's a whole different ballgame. You got a whole different product when you're done with that water because it gathers up all the memory that's in the air. And I like to tell people when I discuss this, when you inhale a breath of air, you are inhaling the same air that Caesar inhaled.
Okay.
So that's what I wanted to say about water.
No, that's fucking brilliant. Carl just added something in here that's really, really good. Oh, fuck, the chat's going off. I can't. Okay, there we go. Does vortexing water reset it? Like formatting a disk?
Yes, it does.
It resets it to its formatted state and to allow continued recording.
Yeah, then you can record.
So in other words,
So
you get rid of all the negative if you want, and then program it with what you want to program it with.
Exactly. And in order to keep it that way, then I have to surround it with gold. So I'll put a gold chain around the bottle or jug or whatever. It can be gold plated. It doesn't have to be pure gold. But yeah, then when the person that I'm using that water on, whatever the intent is, it stays that way. Without the gold chain, then it has a penetrable wall that whatever's going on goes in it. Like I said, you're breathing the same air. If you breathe into water, you're breathing the same air that Jesus was breathing, and Napoleon and everybody. So you blow air into the water, you are putting memory back into the water.
Okay, so why gold?
Why gold? I don't really know why gold. It was what I found that would block it. I tried a lot of other things, and by accident, I had surrounded a water bottle with a gold chain, and it seemed to work. And just what I use. And I've run into a couple other energy healers in the world that also use gold for a block.
I find that really, really interesting because gold is another subject that keeps coming up. And we talked about gold a lot back in 2013, early 2014. And then it kind of gets put aside and doesn't really come up. And yet there's always been like a little thing in the back of my head about gold. And it's like the color gold, the energy of gold. And that there's something there. Now, and I've read shitloads and shitloads of research talking about gold has a DNA. And that they can track a gold's DNA, right? And this is why it's one of those things I joked about the whole thing when Germany wanted their gold back from the Federal Reserve and back in 2012, and the Federal Reserve said no. And people were like, well, they could have just given them other gold. I'm like, no, they couldn't, because every gold is tested for its DNA. And if they'd sent anyone else's gold back to Germany, Germany would have tested it and gone, yeah, it's not our fucking gold. We know what our fucking gold is. Here's the birth certificate. Here's the genetic blueprint of our gold, and this is not our fucking gold.
Well, that's interesting. That makes me think that maybe I should be using gold chains that belong to people I'm treating.
Oh, that could be okay. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. That is actually really interesting. Okay, maybe we'll talk about that later. So the gold thing has always come up for me, and gold light, gold, like it's just something that I've seen a lot in a lot of the energetic stuff that I've done over like fucking years. And the gold came up again when everyone was here on Gozo. And Curtis, didn't you see the gold? There was something about gold that came up in a conversation. I was like, aha, and the gold's back again. And I can't remember what it was. Can one of you guys help me? Who was here in on those conversations?
The gold source.
The gold source?
Under Gozo, where the male and female energy were integrating.
Right.
And then you had those gold stone, the crystals.
Yeah, and all the crystals that I gave you guys were all gold. They're all a golden color crystal. Yeah. Or golden up into a rich... Some of them are a deep coppery brown, but yeah, the golden color. Yeah, gold always seems to come up. And why is it, we've talked about the conversation that we had the last day of the very last day before everyone was going back again. Claire, that we had with you and Nick and I, we were talking about things like the finance, the law, the corporate governments versus the commercial banks versus the religious banks, etc. And we talked about the value, the perception of value. And it's what was the word we used? The accepted, what was the word we used? Something has a value because it is accepted as having the value. Everyone accepts that this thing has this much value.
Confidence.
Thank you. That's the word. The confidence that this has this value. And we said about gold. gold, okay, gold, now we use it in electronics, we use it in all kinds of stuff. But gold in antiquity, so we're told, basically it was a pretty thing you wore around your neck, or you adorned your house with if you were really, really, really fucking rich. But it didn't, what made it? There's lots of shiny things. Do you know what I mean? Like there's lots and lots of things that are, you know, what's it? All that glitters is gold. Well, no. I mean, there's lots of things that glitter and are lovely and pretty. So why was gold the accepted value that all finance and economy were basically based upon until the 20th century? Now, yeah, well, were other forms of currency. Hell, like in Canada, beaver pelts, and if you're live inland, ancient ago, salt was used as a commodity because to trade in and as a currency, because if you lived inland away from the seas, you didn't have access to salt. Why gold? Right. The Egyptians, exactly, Marlena. The Egyptians, always tons of gold jewelry, covered in gold, gold headdresses. And again, there was something that came up in the conversation, a few years back now, about gold being a magnifier. Fuck, I wish I could remember exactly how the conversation went. And it was someone I was speaking to, and they said that gold is a magnifier of intent, or a magnifier of consciousness, maybe? And yeah, a huge conductor as well. Oh, that's kind of interesting. Oh, that's very, very kind of interesting. A magnifier of connection. Yeah, now, so, you know, I don't know enough about monatomic gold. I really, really don't. So I can't even remotely answer that one. That's one that's like over my head. I've never really done much. Yeah, and it's distorted into currency, right? So maybe the original use of gold was programmed out of society and therefore used only as a physical commodity of buy and sell and finance and economy, right? But yeah, Mercedes, yes, there is more to it. And it's like kind of like the water. The gold thing, to me, is kind of like the water thing where I continuously get this kind of tap, like there's another piece here. There's something that's really fundamentally important, but I have no idea. No idea.
Danny, there's something that's come up again within the last couple of days. Well, okay. Actually, probably this morning, with gold again.
Okay.
Where I've been looking at abundance lines.
Yeah.
That where I've seen this is that there's a sort of, I saw my friend Donald, my dragon, I saw him building a ley line, and he was putting all sorts of cables into it, and then one day he poured some liquid gold into it. And I got the impression that it's quite rare for him to be able to get hold of that. And I was seeing the gold is the ultimate abundance in an energetic form. And this morning something strange happened, because I'd started to listen to The Sounds of Silence by Disturbed.
Yes.
And I had been putting sort of little feelers out to see if Gilbert would put that through his frequency changing technology. And I heard from Edward that he'd already done that and had put it out in the cloud. So I started listening to it, and the frequency of it is so different once you start having it through that 444 or 432 hertz that Gilbert puts it through.
Oh, really?
It's 432. Yeah, it takes all the edge off it, because it's a really quite a angry version. Yeah.
Powerful.
Powerful. But you put it through that frequency, and it starts becoming harmonious. And for reasons probably complicated to go into, I happen to have one of the copper coins, not that it's probably pure copper, from Gozo. a little 5 cents, because I've got a bit of I've got some sort of energetic thing, and I was trying to discharge it using this copper coin. So it's sitting in the palm of my left hand, and it started tingling in response to this music. So I thought, that's interesting. I'll go and get one of my pure silver coins, and I'll put that in my palm, and I'll play the music again. And I did, and I've got a visual. I saw a snake come out of it, a silver snake. And a silver snake came out, and it started singing this song really powerfully right in my face, and I saw a sort of burnt out landscape behind it. And I thought, well, that's very interesting. And then I went and got a gold coin that I happened to have, just one, pure gold coin, and that's a Cougarand.
Uh-huh.
And I put that in my hand, and I played the music again, and I saw this picture of a lion. And it was in the pose of the phoenix on the plains of Africa. And it was indifferent and borderline contempt. And I called to it, and it turns its imperious face at me with this sort of indifference and contempt. And I'm trying to sort of reach it. And I even sing part of the song to it. And it comes out and it says, one voice will not be enough. So I was thinking, what am I going to do? Oh, Lisa's got a lion energy, so I sent a PM to Lisa, probably when she was asleep, busy and talking to people. But I put a note of this in a little chat room we've just got for the Gozo afters, and Edward had a go at connecting with it, and he blasted, he tried to talk to it and it wasn't having anything, and then he blasted gold heart energy at it, and its whole attitude changed. It became friendly and playful with Edward.
It was actually very funny.
Oh, you're there, Edward. Hi.
Edward's here too.
It was actually very funny because I was sitting in the sun outside, the only little bit sun we had that day, and I just closed my eyes, and inside of my eyes it became all golden color. And I tried to take contact with the lion and tried to talk with it, and it didn't want to talk back. It was very grumpy, basically. And then suddenly, totally automatic, the golden color started to become more active, and it basically shot to the lion and took contact. And the lion sort of looked up surprised from, what the hell is that? And then suddenly it came really running at me, straight at me. And when it arrived, I could sort of pet it and go through its manes, and it behaved like a kitten. And after that, I explained a little bit about what had happened, and he was just fine with everything again. So he's back. So that was basically what happened now.
Okay, so I have an interesting question here for you, because you use, and specifically because you said it's a Cougarand. And the one thing that we're talking about when you deal with gold Cougarands is blood money and blood gold. Like, the money itself, the gold Cougarands are from the South African gold mines, where it's just, horrific slave labor, and they call it blood gold, right? And we talked about how, okay, so again, Claire, the whole thing with the sea and the whole, the bit about like the merchants and the death and the destruction, etc., and it sets an energetic tone. So I wonder if the anger of the lion and the disdain and the just also plays in part of the fact of where it came from, like where that gold, the energy, the energetics, if you will, of the creation of that coin set in it.
I found it quite interesting that when I bought some silver coins a few years ago, and I had an impulse to get some silver. And I thought, well, I'll get a gold coin as well. And I really felt I was going against my intuition getting a gold coin.
Hmm.
And I did. So I just got a single one. Now this one here is dated 1974, so it's still during the era of apartheid. I just randomly got one off eBay.
That's interesting. That's an interesting era of apartheid too. At that point in time, wow.
Yeah. So all I'm seeing though is the lion. I get far more destruction with my my silver one, which is a British one. It's a Britannia. It's 1999. It's Britannia, and you've got this thing, Britannia Rule the Raves. That's quite an interesting. Britannia, the song, is not Britannia Rules the Waves. It's an injunction. It says Britannia Rule the Raves. It's a slightly different understanding about that. So I've got Britannia on the back of here in a chariot. She's got a trident in her hand. She's got, the chariot's got two horses, and it looks remarkably like sea under their legs. And this is, as I say, is 1999. So that frequency with the snake coming out and the burnt out landscape behind was actually much more disturbing than the Cougarand one, for some reason. But what I was getting out of this is that the purity of those metals, and yet they're turned into currency, but it's not fiat currency. It actually, I think, it has value because of the connections. Now, I carried on with this experiment because I have some other coins, and I had an American coin, a $1, which is the centenary of independence. So it's dated 1976. It's got a Liberty Bell on the back in front of what at first sight appears to be the Earth, but since it's pitted, I'm not entirely sure it's the Earth. And when I played the music through that, which is now fiat currency, because it's not the pure frequency, it's not the pure metal, I got an image of, I always call them honey monsters, because you have to know the advertising from way back. But it's like a sort of fluffy creature, but it's black, and you just see two eyes, and it's like the frequency, the energy behind fiat money. And I was singing a song to it, and it was sort of watching me and not quite sure what was going on, and totally different energy. There wasn't a pure energy there like there was with the silver and the gold. And I went back to the copper coin, the Gozo coin, which I suspect is not made of pure copper, but
it's not. No. Very little copper in them now, actually.
Yeah. So since I didn't have a pure copper coin, I just used that, and I did a bit more going into that coin. And I got Venus de Milo come out, the statue with no arms.
Yeah.
And she turned around and she shouted at me because there is a line in the song that says, "Take my arms." And it's not "take my hands," it's "take my arms," which is a bit strange. So this is a goddess of love connected to copper. And I looked up some information on this Venus. When she was found, it's at the Greek island of Milos. And they found her left hand. And in her left hand was an apple. So whether
that's right.
Yeah. So
can I say something?
Yeah.
Quickly, because now we have Venus, and that was basically the love that is subverted into the money. We talked about that, Claire. And the gold is basically the physical manifestation of unconditional love.
Yes.
It's again love that is taken over by the monetary system. So that's probably why they wanted to have gold as their money, because they could subvert the unconditional love with that.
Oh, yes. Oh, I'm getting shivers with that. So what's that just leaves the silver?
That leaves the silver, yeah.
which was a snake, which is our ancient wisdom.
Yeah.
Possibly.
And snake, the whole kundalini and everything. Life force.
Yeah, and the life force that goes from the base up to the crown connects all those chakras.
So life force and love, they took for their money.
And wisdom possibly too. And the connecting energy.
Mm.
Interesting. Oh, this is, yeah.
And there's another piece there, though, because they have debased the currency by taking out the gold and the silver and the copper and replacing it with tungsten. All fake. Tungsten and what else do they use? Tin? Nickel. Tungsten and nickel. Brass, yes.
Yep.
So yeah, I've just lost all my energy, which means there's another little thing to find on this.
Yeah.
Because it's
so even the perceived physical currency that normally, let's say, you and I talked about that last day here, and we talked about, with the little IOU. Here's your money. Here's a picture with some scribbles on it, and it's $1, and it is a piece of paper, and it basically is like an IOU, and you have the confidence to accept it. Even the coins that would actually have an intrinsic value, and that was the whole thing about coins, is they were measured in a weight, and they were valued according to the weight of the metal and the value of that metal, gold, silver, copper. But now even those coins have no value. Right? I mean, unless you go and buy a silver dollar, which is a commemorative thing, and it doesn't cost you a fucking dollar either. Even though it's a silver dollar, doesn't cost a fucking dollar. They don't have any of the perceived value that we would have had confidence in anymore.
Well, now we're going completely electronic, so you don't even have the value of the bit of paper with the squiggly lines on it.
Exactly. Now, okay, and then going right back to what I started the whole thing off with, we're talking about the cryptocurrencies. The removal of all perception of value. All perception of value. What happens when you go to a completely electronic currency? Well, there isn't even the perceived, I mean, if you're a coin collector, there's always perceived value. Even bills, right? Old bills, certain old bills are rare. Some of them, people trade them and they're worth more than their accepted face value. But when you get to the point where all of a sudden there's no value, there's not even the perception of value anymore. It's literally just numbers on a screen. I don't know, can we say that that's representative of society as a whole right now?
Well, there's two things I've been playing with on that, because I have, I've mentioned this thing about consideration, that you can't have a contract without consideration. And in contractual terms, you can have the smallest of consideration, and it's still consideration. But if you take absolutely every consideration away, there is no contract. It's not enforceable.
That's interesting from that aspect, Claire.
Energetically, it's a gift. It's either gift or force, but it's not a contract. Because you're getting nothing in return for your obligation. And if you get nothing in return for your obligation, it's pure gift. And energetically, that's different to a contract. That's what I feel. That's where I feel that you're moving so far away that people would actually recognize that there's nothing, there is nothing in return for your obligation at all. It's pure smoke and mirrors.
Okay, so Carl just said something. He said, Bitcoin is created using a unit of electrical energy. That is the consideration. But only in the perception that electricity is something you pay for. Right? What was it? Oh, what was the expression? Nikola Tesla is one of Tesla's famous quotes about energy. Basically, if energy is free, i.e., if we do not have to pay for our power to keep our houses warm, to keep our food cool, to run our cars so that we can go and do the things that we want to do, does it then, I'm not saying this very well. At this moment, we have to pay for electricity. Therefore, there is a perception, yes, Sony, there is a perception that this electricity is a unit of currency. Oh! Claire, did you have a chance to read Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars?
No, I haven't yet. No, I was going to ask you for the link again.
Okay, during this conversation we had on Claire's last day, I said about the fact of the book Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars talks about energy and currency and current, and basically everything that in the monetary can be explained using the exact same terminology of what we perceive as energy, as in electricity, etc., etc. So, Carl, that fucking is really interesting then. If all of a sudden we look at a Bitcoin as being a unit of electricity is what the currency is perceived to be set upon. Oh, I do have to go back and reread that book again, because you sit there and makes you wonder if that was the goal all along, to get to that point. I mean, the book basically says that the Second World War never ended. There's just been little breaks within the wars, but the fact of the Second World War is still ongoing, and that it's a financial war. And basically lays it out. It was all planned right from the get-go. Every single aspect of it was planned from the get-go on all sides. So, I don't know.
Sorry, I was just going to go along my second line of thought along this, which I was playing out to you when I was talking to you on that last day. Because to my mind, just the whole way that the monetary system has started, you started with gold. And you started with a nobleman depositing his gold with somebody. I call them the goldsmiths because that's how I would heard it was. But you deposit the gold for safekeeping in a vault. And the person who's got that gold charges for the safekeeping. Mm-hmm. So he's getting an income to keep it safe. But he doesn't do that. He works out that the nobleman is only going to ask for 10% of his money at any one time. So he's got 90% sitting in there, and he lends it out.
He lends it out.
And to begin with, for interest. To begin with, he hands over physical gold, and that's his obligation. Handing over the physical gold. The obligation of the borrower is to hand back the same amount of gold with something extra of value, possibly gold, possibly something else. Now, as time goes on, the goldsmith runs out of physical gold because he wants to make more and more profit and then more and more, and he runs out of physical gold, even though it's not even his gold. So he then does the IOUs. I'm not going to give you the physical gold. You're going to get a piece of paper with squiggly lines on it. Yeah. And that is your guarantee that I will eventually give you gold. But it's a promise, so it's a debt. It's actually a debt.
You have to have confidence that he's actually going to give you that gold for that scribble on paper.
And it is a debt. So the obligations at the beginning is that the goldsmith, who's the lender, hasn't actually performed his obligation. He's just given a promise to perform the obligation. Whereas the borrower, at some point, will perform his obligation by returning money and interest. So then we get to a point where even the squiggly lines are not enough, because the goldsmith won't have the gold to pay the squiggly lines. So he decides to persuade you that the squiggly line is his obligation. You know, all you get from me is the squiggly line. And you've got that, and now I've performed my obligation. And that's because we accept the squiggly lines as the actual gold and as the consideration. But if we're now going to electronic, it means that they actually can't print enough physical money now. There's not enough paper with squiggly lines on.
Nope.
So
and it's true. That's exactly it.
Yeah. So how much squiggly lines are there around? There's not enough. So they now have to have an electronic version to remove as much of the physical bits of paper as they possibly can, which is now, it's not even with Bitcoin. Most of our currency that's going around is not physical at all. It's currents. Yeah. But it's still fundamentally a debt. We're just being persuaded. Yeah, suppose we say, well, you know, your IOU, you withdraw the consent in an energetic form and say, no, we want the physical gold now. And how much gold would that actually be in a physical form? You know, bearing in mind, I promised to pay you the sum of £1. Well, a pound of what? Yeah. It's a weight. It's a weight. Yeah. So it could be wheat, it could be something else. But if you change and cease to be confident, the amount of debt that rolls back all the way back to the first time you lend out with squiggly lines, you've got a huge debt. It's not really this idea that we're the ones in debt. Well, actually, there's two sides to the obligation. It's just one side is trying to persuade you with trinkets that had the full value. But we're paying trinkets back now. It's the interest that has the actual value. But throughout...
Sorry, Claire. I just wanted to come in on that one because I've done an awful lot of research on money and the basics of it and so on. And you're partially correct in what you were saying. But if I can try and summarize it as quickly as possible, because it's actually a fairly in-depth subject, but the goldsmith that you were referring to, what they did originally was they took possession of people's gold and silver, because that's what they were using to buy and sell, apart from the 700 years when we were using a tally stick, but that's another story. And what they did was hold on to the gold and give a receipt for that gold to say, we've got your gold, this is how much. Now, what people started to do was trade on those paper receipts and say, okay, I've got this amount of gold. Here's the receipt that says I've got that gold in the bank. You just minus whatever it is for the payments. We'll both sign it. And then away it goes. That's where endorsements come from. That was done on the back. Yeah. Now, what the bankers were realizing was, well, hang on a minute. We've got all this gold in the vaults, and all these receipts are going around. Business is being done outside, and nobody's coming in for the gold. It's sitting in our vaults, and nobody's coming in apart from 10%. So what they realized, and this is how fractional reserve banking came into being, is that they could issue receipts to another 90% or 9 times approximately what they had in the vaults. Yeah. And at that point, that's where fractional reserve came into being, and fiat currency came about, and so on. What's happened most recently, because all of the countries of the world have basically been bankrupted, and the central banks are now in control of everything, what's happened is they said to all of the governments and all of the politicians, look, we have had issues with the bad economy, and you know, the currencies have gone up and down. We'll come in, we're bankers, we're professionals, and we'll look after this for you. We'll issue your currency, but for the privilege, we want to get paid. So we're going to charge you interest. That's now happening all over the world. There's probably only 3 countries in the world that doesn't happen. And the debt, because realistically a money supply the debt is actually the money supply. The national debt that we all talk about is the money supply of a country.
What's in circulation.
Exactly. And that can be electronic or it can be paper, coin, whatever. But it's the total currency money supply of a country that is tabulated by the central banks. And of course, what they do is they issue $100 billion, but they want $110 billion back. The extra 10 billion was never created, so it's inherently going to fail and collapse.
Exactly.
And even positive interest comes from the existing, so it just collapses further. So the higher the interest rates, plus or minus, the quicker the system is going to collapse. That's where we are right now. And unfortunately, the debt that everybody is talking about only exists because our governments and politicians agreed to allow private families, private bankers, to issue our money. Where in reality, and Danny, you may or may not know this, but Canada was the only country in the world for, well, actually since about 1935 to 1974, where they predominantly were using the Public Bank of Canada to issue money to the government, federal, provincial, and lesser degree municipal governments at almost interest-free rates or very, very small rates. And Canada's money supply for that period of time, and actually probably another 50 years before that, was approximately $19 billion. That's what it took, according to the Fraser Institute, to run Canada for probably 100 years, up until about 1974, when Justin Trudeau signed on with...
Pierre Elliott Trudeau, darling.
Sorry, did I say Justin?
Yeah, you said Justin.
Yes, it was. I did say Justin, didn't I? Yes, you're correct. It was Pierre Trudeau in 1974. And he signed us on with the international bankers for the same central bank system. In the space of 22 years, Canada's debt/money supply went from $19 billion to $587 billion in 22 years, where the previous 100 years, it had remained approximately 19 billion. So the issue is not money itself, it's the interest that's charged on the money and given to private families.
And, the whole fractional reserve banking thing plays a huge role into that. Like I said, we could do a whole show on nothing but that. Like, seriously. I mean, this is another... We forget there's a lot of people who are just kind of new to all of this. And the stuff that you and I have been fucking researching for fucking bajillions of years, it feels like, is really, really new to a lot of people. I want to just jump back for a second because Dawn made a really interesting statement going back to the whole thing about electricity again, right? Now I got to scroll back and try and find her comment. And she said, hold on. Okay, talking about electricity, and we're talking about the perceived value of electricity if electricity is free, right? And she talked about it being illegal to be off the grid. And they are passing laws all over the place saying that you cannot be off grid. And I know there's a few places in Canada where they've applied. And I know in Australia there's a few places that they've started trying to push these little laws through, but especially in the States, making it illegal to be off the grid, as in not having utilities. Now, and the conversation started going into this a little bit. Utilities is really, really fucking interesting. And it's another missing piece of the puzzle. And I had a conversation with a guy back in October or November 2014. And I put the word out within my own contacts in the Intel world that I needed to get some specific pieces of information about certain people. And this person reached out to me. Now, we talked for about 5 hours straight. And this guy was basically an economic hitman. And he worked originally with the FBI. And he talked about how he was given jobs to take down corporations. And basically the kind of thing where you got the envelope that said to go into this office at this time and just do this, 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 and this. And that's what he did. And he took down major fucking corporations. In doing so, he got cocky, though, because he learned how to do these things. So he kind of went private. And he started going after, first of all, it was like small, like he dealt with the smaller, like in the States, smaller local banks, etc. And he started filing claims on them and working through the basic system on basically holding them up for ransom, really is what it came out to. And then he got too big for his britches and he went after the IMF. And he actually worked the system, in which case it was to the point of like where the IMF owed him everything. And he got the knock on the door and they hauled him off to prison. No, he was never charged, of course, because how do you charge someone for actually working the legal system to the point that you pretty much own the IMF? Long story short, he got into this discussion of what he was working on, and that was how he was basically using the system against the system, and he was taking down banks, he was taking down all kinds of stuff, and he was in Canada at this point. And he was talking about the straw man stuff and how to get your value back. And he gave me, like, I fucking took, that notebook is fucking gone, which is a piss off, but I took copious amounts of notes. This guy outlined exactly how it was that you went about to get your straw man accounts, how to set up the trusts, how to do all of this stuff. And one of the things he said was when you got the trust, you took your trust documents to the utility company. And from that point forward, you would never pay a utility bill again, because it would basically be your trust, i.e. your straw man, that would pay your utility bill. And I can remember at the time thinking, oh, wait, what? Why utilities? And this is where I cursed myself for having not taken note or having lost the notebook. He explained it, and I can't remember the exact reason why, but basically the utilities, like electricity specifically, is directly tied to your straw man account. Now, let's go back and look at this in other terms. And we're going over time. Yeah, hey, John Carl, I know you've had a long day. We're going over time tonight because, we just are. We're the energy. We were the value. We've talked about this forever and ever and ever. And I always joke about the line in fucking Matrix movie when they call Neo Copper Top. And that they're plugged into all these pods, and they're literally, their energy is being harvested, physically harvested in the movie. But again, what is the analogy here? When we look at this whole thing, so again, this manifesto, this basically handbook that ended up getting out to the public, this quiet weapons for silent weapons for quiet wars, that puts all the analogy between finance and electricity, and basically everything in the laws of electricity and all the rest of it is exactly how finance works. And then you have this bit with utilities, and the fact is I'm making it illegal for you to go off grid. And then this bit about the Bitcoin, that piece, that one little piece of a unit of electricity. And the one thing that comes out in that book is the fact of everything that is playing out now was planned back then. And this book was written in the early 50s, or maybe even in the 40s, late 40s. Everything was planned out. So if we go from gold being the value to a piece of paper with some scribbles on it being the perceived value, to an electronic currency where the unit of value is electricity, I don't find that coincidental. Like, I'm sorry, I don't find any of that could possibly be coincidental. Yeah, Renee, the long con. Are we looking at the extreme long con? Oh, that's a really, really interesting thing to look at.
Danny?
Yes, sir.
Danny, I just found something. Okay. I think last year, the government of Canada, with it was the provincial or the federal. Anyway, they sold off all of, well, almost all of Ontario Hydro. And that made me think about with the bankers taking over the Bank of Canada. Because now the hydro bills are higher now than what they were under the government.
It's not just Canada, though.
Right.
It's not just Canada. Because the big stick that they hold over all these governments in Greece, the whole debt fiasco in Greece, one of the first things the IMF and the European Central Bank did was to force Greece to privatize their assets. And one of the first things that was sold off was their electricity company. Government-controlled electricity company got sold off. Okay? Same thing in the States. There are multiple states now that their electricity companies have been privately bought. They're no longer under state or federal control. Interesting.
But that also go for like prisons. Like
Earl, say that again. I couldn't hear you.
Prisons, like privately owned prisons, because the government used to run the prison system.
Yep. Oh yeah. So this is interesting. Okay, so I don't know. This is a little homework assignment for everyone. Especially Carl, you and John Carl. I want you guys to put your head, think about this, because this whole thing about the electricity with the Bitcoin as the unit of currency, plus all the other shit that we've just discussed, there's a serious freaking connection here. I don't know. Guys, wrap your heads around that a bit and just see what you come up with. Those of you who are motivated to do so. And those of you who want to think about water some more and think about water some more. And yeah, some big pieces. Oh, and what is water really good at doing is generating electrical current and transmitting electrical current. Major water conductor, conductivity of water. Yes. Yeah, and the electric universe, Mercedes, the electric universe theory, some really, really interesting shit in that too. And that, thank you, because that's another little piece that I think I'm going to have to go in and check again myself. Yeah, connect some dots, Marlena. Just looking at that piece, electricity and currency, and just how they fit together. When we post this archive, I will post a PDF of the book, Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars, for those of you who want to read it. It's an interesting read, let me tell you. And I'm going to sit down tomorrow and I'm going to fucking reread it. I said I was going to do it last week, and, you know, my pea brain just kind of forgot. So I will actually reread it. Currents in the water and electricity currency, that's what I'm saying. Too much. So, yeah. I don't know, guys. Shit just gets more and more interesting every fucking week. There's just another holy shit pieces that just keep coming out. So,
Danny, please,
yeah, Maury,
before you sign off, I want to say something.
Yeah.
You started this whole thing off about a chemical
And you're muted, Maury. We have got to do something about that computer of yours, I swear.
All right, I'll just bear with me. I'll make it work. And if I am, just shake your head like you did the last time. There's something in this all bigger than just the nitty-gritty of the chemicals that you started off with, because it's led to a lot of conversation in the chat that isn't showing up in the video. You started with hydrogen, and then you made the connection with water because it's the major aspect of it. And of course, yeah, you went to gold too, and that has a function too. And we looked at it. Those are copies of something else. Hydrogen. Now you're talking about water. I see it. Water is the connecting.
The connecting.
It's connecting of us to our source, our true self. The invaders, if you will, they never had access to that. So they created something, a diluted one, and they used us as the vehicle by which they could siphon off our true connection, which we never lose. I know I'm talking spiritual talk, but I know you get it.
Yeah.
And a lot of them in this room get it. And we're coming back to the realization we don't need this artificial. We've been taught and we've been led to believe that we need this electricity, we need this, all of this artificial replacement that they're deriving their energy through us from, with their replacement technologies. But in our natural state, we didn't need any of this stuff.
Exactly.
We were self-sustaining, and one of the vehicles was water. Another one was gold. Not as currency, but as a life force, some kind of way. And I don't have all the technical, but that's the vision I'm seeing. And I at least that much with you to broaden this thing, to make kind of come together. And that's, I hope to hell I said enough to at least paint a word picture. And I think it's important to at least say that.
Yep. No, I agree. No, that is a most excellent painting you put forward. Igor, okay, here's the thing. Igor said, Maurice, they don't have the keys, and the new hydrogen has no neutrons, and a neutron is an electrically neuter particle of the atom. It is not charged. What does it mean then? Okay, so here's the interesting piece about neutrons. And I meant to get into this, totally forgot. Neutrons, if you will, are like the stem cell of the atom. They are, what's the word? Hold on, I will give you the word. I have it. Undifferentiated matter. Now, of course, this is theorized. It's theorized that is what a neutron is. A neutron, as it's neutral, can go in either direction, right? So I called it the stem cell of the atom. Little interesting tidbit. So I went in to go just get a little search on neutrons as an undifferentiated piece of matter. I want to show you what I came up with. So I did this little search here. Neutron, undifferentiated matter. And about, where are we here? Where is it? Is it right down here somewhere? Oh, come on, click on it. There we go. On the first page of a Google search for those terms, I come up with a link to the Book of Urantia. And I literally turned to Nick and was like, what the fuck? The Book of Urantia? You've got to be kidding me. And there's a whole thing in here, and I haven't had a chance to review the entire bit. So if I can get down here, where are we? Oh, come on. Whole bunch of things about neutrons and matter. So, I don't know. It just seemed to me to be an interesting little piece of the puzzle. The very last thing I would have thought that would have come up when looking at scientific stuff was the Book of Urantia. But we are talking about control structures, right? And that's what the Book of Urantia is all about, is control structures. So yeah, there's a little piece of the puzzle that just gets more and more interesting. Yes. Okay, guys. Well, that is it for tonight. We're only 21 minutes overtime. He and John Carl's probably completely fucking exhausted. So I'm going to wrap it up here. If you haven't been to RTS.Earth, we've asked the question about whether you prefer the standing platform that is being used for the social media aspect or the beta test version. It looks like everyone pretty much, most people prefer the beta test version. And I agree. I much prefer it as well for the simplicity of it and the fact that we've got a direct line of communication with the developer, which always helps. So I think in maybe the next few days, John Carl is going to, I was going to say John Carl and I, but who am I fool? Like, we all know it's not John Carl. I will just stand in the background with pom-poms and cheer. We'll make the switch over. We'll give everyone at least 24 hours notice when it's going to happen, because the site will go down while the switchover is taking place and putting the new operating system, whatever you want to call it, switching it over, taking the other one out that we don't like, putting that one in its place. When this happens, we are probably going to lose a lot of data, at least within the social media aspect. So if you posted things in the group on the Buddy Press side that you want to save, I don't know if we're going to be able to transfer things like the groups from the one over automatically to the groups the other. We may lose all the data. So if you have anything that you've put in the groups, well, it's a recipe, it's a photograph, it's a conversation that you've had, I would suggest you go in, go through it, grab copies of it, so that we can move things over, and then you can reset up groups if we have to, which I think we will. The groups will have to be reset up under the new platform. Okay. Anything else, John Carl? Am I missing anything with that?
No, should be all right. This will probably happen on Wednesday. I told everybody the 7th. I'm going to stick with that.
Okay.
So if you need to move anything, get it done by next Tuesday. So you've got a couple of days left, and then Wednesday I'm going to get everything all shifted over. What's in the existing forums, groups, yeah, it's going to be gone. Yeah. So if there's anything in there you want to hang on to or you want to keep, go get it now and store it. Just store it in a folder on your desktop or whatever. And then on Thursday when it's all done, you can go and put the stuff back in the new groups. I think some of it's already duplicated already. Yeah. I think some people have been posting in both places at once. So shouldn't be a big deal. I think all we're really going to lose is just, a month and a half of just general conversation. So
it's not, and that's why we want to make the switch over now before we have 6 months of stuff. Once we have the new thing in place, that is when, because I talked about it on Wednesday about getting the people together who were volunteering to become moderators or admin people, etc. We're going to wait until we have the new piece set up, because I know you started to run some training on how to do some stuff if we're in the middle of switching shit over. So once we get it all set up and everything's flowing again smoothly, I'll make contact with everyone or put a hey guys, we're having a meeting. Yeah, then we'll have that little get together. Okay, guys. That's it for us. I will see you Wednesday night for the Unfuck It discussion. Bye, everyone.